Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very accomplished entrepreneur from Hyderabad, India, Charu Dhyani. Charu, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh.
Charu is the co-founder and chief executive officer of Zero Carbon and Wudbox. She has been awarded with the iconic Women Creating a Better World for All by Women Economic Forum. So, Charu, before we talk about sustainability and Zero Carbon, tell me about your own journey in brief.
Sure. So, Ashutosh, I think I would say that entrepreneurship is relatively new for me. I have always been raised to become a good working professional. And like a lot of middle class families, we were told that you should take up a degree which provides you a livelihood for your life. And that's how we were sort of raised.
Correct.
So I also did I did my bachelor's and master's in physiotherapy, which was an allied medical service. So it was, supposed to make you technically equipped enough that you can carry on with your entire life.
Right.
So I did my physiotherapy, and I also started working post that in a healthcare startup. And I think that is one of the best thing that could have happened to me, because when you work in a startup, and if it is related to what you were already doing, you kind of start then appreciating what an entrepreneurship looks like and feels like. And I think I kind of tasted that early in my career. So I think that was my one of the important part of my journey, I would like to say. And then working in that startup for a couple of years, treating patients who came with different type of spine care problems, etc. That happened, and eventually, because I'm close to nature, my roots are from Uttaranchal, so we are typically, hilly people. My parents have always raised me in a way that we were always close to nature, and we were taught to kind of live in collaboration with the nature and not, as us versus it. So that's what happened. And then I think the upbringing, the closeness to nature, taste of entrepreneurship turned into entrepreneurship. And then that's how I kind of started my own business ventures as well, which is like an extension of me.
Amazing. So let's talk now about Zero Carbon and Wudbox. Tell me a little bit about what you do here and what led you to become a sustainability entrepreneur.
Right. So I think because I was always raised to be caring about nature, and we were always taught that this is the only way of living. It is kind of an extension for me as an entrepreneurship, sustainability. And when I started, you tend to read about it more, right? I think curiosity, as entrepreneurs, you're also kind of curious. We try to find out what's going on in the world.
Right.
So as I read about it more, I understood that awareness about sustainability, and this is now, but when I started back in 2017, it wasn't a buzzword. So it was more about environment. It was more about eco-friendly. It was more about how do you reduce your environmental impact. And that made me realize there is a lot of waste that we are producing. There's a lot of wastage of resources that we are doing. There's a lot of waste that can be converted back into resources, and it can be brought back into economy and creating like a circular economy.
Right.
And that kind of an interest in it brought me into sustainability as businesses with which makes profit, and not like an NGO, because that just made more sense for me. So and when it comes to both Zero Carbon and Wudbox, we started off as a B2C venture with Wudbox. But as we moved along, we realized that the impact that a B2B segment will create right now is much more, because 70% of your carbon emissions are created by industries of different types.
Right.
So at Zero Carbon and Wudbox, both of them, We are trying to help companies, organizations of different sizes reduce their carbon footprint, choose things which are positively impacting the environment,
Hmm.
and democratizing sustainability in a way.
Wow, fascinating. And when you talk about sustainability, how would you define the term in the context of Pro Zero Carbon and Woodbox?
So, so I think it's a very misunderstood, misused,
Correct.
used a lot word,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Anything and everything is named as sustainability nowadays to get the attention.
Absolutely.
Uh, but for us, at the core of what we do, sustainability is about how do we keep the economic engine running?
Hmm.
How do we make sure that the economic growth keeps on happening
Hmm.
while you are creating a positive impact on the environment?
Hmm.
And the two things are not mutually exclusive for us.
Hmm.
We truly believe that we can make it happen together, and that's what we're working towards. So for example, if we look at Woodbox, that is basically about sustainable products and environment friendly products. Uh, there are so many types of businesses, and the needs of different businesses is different. So,
Hmm.
as an example, a hotel industry, for example, utilizes a lot of single use plastics,
Hmm.
right? They have guests,
Right.
etc. So they use a lot of single-use plastic and produce a lot of waste. So for them, providing them with alternatives to single-use plastic for their guests.
Hmm.
If you're using amenities, you can nowadays, use amenities which are biodegradable. You have bamboo toothbrushes to natural loofahs, and you have a lot of different options available. So for them, it makes sense to offer that as an option rather than providing them with something else which is not making sense. For a corporate, for example, they would use a lot of products for their employees.
Uh-huh.
So for them, it is about providing that. So for us, it's about identifying what makes sense for what business and providing them that. And for Pro Zero Carbon, similarly, it is about how do we make operations more efficient and
Correct.
help companies reduce the cost and become sustainable as a byproduct.
Right. Right. Very interesting. And for both these organizations, Pro Zero Carbon and Woodbox, how do you incorporate sustainability into your business model?
So, so I think for us, sustainability is like the core of what we do.
Correct.
It is about, it is absolutely 100% about sustainability. So, of course, the kind of services, the kind of products that we provide
Hmm.
are having minimal or no environmental impact, but also in terms of the kind of practices that we do at our premises. We don't use single use plastics, for example.
Hmm.
We use options for if you have to use stationery, we use 100% recycled stationery.
Right.
We do a lot of awareness activity, even for our own employees and for our own organization as well.
Hmm.
And through a lot of, and we try to also do a lot of awareness activities outside of the organization for corporates and different things. So I think our business is all about sustainability, and we try to incorporate as much as possible.
Correct. Well said. Well said. And Charu, as you've been building these two businesses, tell me a little bit about some of the challenges or and obstacles that you have faced, and how have you overcome some of these?
So I think when it comes to challenges, one of the biggest challenge is awareness. So and of course, the level of awareness in general is less. It's a misunderstood word. It sometimes also means that it's for good of the planet. And I think that's the biggest challenge because post COVID, I think all of us have seen that we don't need to protect nature at all. It just takes
Absolutely.
care of itself.
Yeah.
It's about understanding that how is it relevant for us? How is it relevant for our health? How
Hmm.
is it relevant for our businesses? If if the planet gets heated up a lot,
Hmm.
then for example, your workers cannot work as efficiently.
Correct.
Something as simple as that. or your employees may not feel like traveling, productivity reduces,
Hmm.
your equipments don't function as effectively as they would.
Right.
So for us, a big challenge is to make sure that people understand how it is relevant for their business. Then of course you have cost.
Hmm.
If there isn't enough demand, then of course the cost is relatively higher. So
Correct.
to find more innovative ways to make sure that the reach of the things that we do is increased, so that the demand rises and the cost reduces, and we
Hmm.
are able to innovate, utilizing technology to make sure that the products and things become more functional. Information is something that is, and regulations, for example, is a challenge. There aren't enough government regulations. It's coming up, uh, but again, it's a work in progress. So we deal with all of this while we are trying to work towards the impact that we want to create.
Fascinating. Great response. Thank you. And Charu, since you just spoke about government regulations, my next question is on regulation. And the question is, how do you see regulation impacting sustainability? And what policies would you like to see implemented?
So I think I would one start from a global and then kind of go to Indian scenario here.
Hmm.
If we look at Europe, for example, European Union is much more advanced than many other economies, and they have brought in a taxonomy recently, wherein they have defined which economic activities are sustainable and which aren't, and they've also included financial institutions in it, so that they can give loans, etc., to people who are doing more green activities.
Right.
Similar to that, I think we are also seeing what is happening globally, and RBI has also brought in ESG and green funds. So they are, in a way, beginning to define what type of financing a banks would do. So that's something that we already see, but
Right.
we need to make it relevant to the country. Japan has started making sure it's mandatory from 23 financial year onwards for
Mhm.
this for ESG disclosures. So no
Hmm.
matter what the size of your company is, but you need to kind of at least do the ESG disclosures.
Right.
Similar to that, if we can also bring in more ESG disclosures, carbon tax, for example, this could be one thing which could prevent people from producing more carbon emissions. And of
Hmm.
course, subsidies, I think, is everybody understand how you brought in subsidies for solar and
Correct.
renewable. You need to bring in those things as well.
Correct. Well said. Well said. And Charu, do you see technology playing a role in being able to significantly, impact sustainability?
Um, so, so I think technology, since the time it has come into the human evolution,
Hmm.
it has played role in all disruptions.
Correct.
And this is no different than the disruption that it brought in a couple of years ago with different things. So, for example, if I see right now data management, we don't document enough things related to. If you may call it sustainability related, but I would say your energy, water, waste, every operational aspect is not documented,
Mhm.
and what can't be documented cannot be improved. So you
Right.
can't measure it, you can't improve it.
Correct.
So you need a lot of technological innovations in data management, but you also need basic things like how can you make your buildings more efficient,
Hmm.
and you can use a lot of technologies like you can remove heat from your buildings with technology, so the carbon footprint reduces. Waste segregation, at this point of time, I think if we are able to find better ways of more efficiently segregating waste, possibly at the source, and that's where I think technology will play a really big role.
Hmm.
Uh, a lot of people know about these sustainable aviation fuels, for example. I
Correct.
think technology will also help in making them more efficient. Longer duration flights can be used with those kind of fuels. Um, we work with a lot of manufacturing industries,
Hmm.
so we understand that when either if it's a boiler or if it's a cooler or a cooling system or different aspects of manufacturing. And since as in, India wants to become the next hub of export, and we want to manufacture. So we need a lot of technological advancements in operations, in transportation, packaging. So there's like a whole lot of ways in which I think technologies will fit in here beautifully.
Thank you. My next question to you is, that I've spoken to so many people on sustainability, and a lot of them say that there is a general sense of skepticism when it comes to sustainability. I'd love to get your perspective, Charu, on how do you handle skepticism or criticism?
So I think for a very long time it was linked to CSR, and it was linked to social good. It was linked to something external to uh, your business, the core of your business. And so I think at this point of time, it has become a social impact. And that is why people are skeptical. There's lack of information. That is why I think also they're skeptical. We also face a lot of those questions in which people mention that, it'll increase my cost, for example. However, if you will look at, we worked with a company, and they used a lot of, they used to take out groundwater, right? Now, groundwater, if you want to draw out groundwater, it requires electricity. But
Right.
however, moment you start recycling that groundwater, you start taking out lesser water, your energy consumption reduces, your electricity bill reduces, so it saves you costs. And this is just one example, but there's so many things that you can do. But I think skepticism comes from the fact there's a lot of negative noise that also occurs, or
Correct.
that people speak against businesses also a lot when it comes to this. So it has been happening for quite a number of years. So hence the skepticism is, I wouldn't call it, it has some groundwork has been done to create that, but hopefully it should change in time. At
I'm
least they're
sure.
trying.
No, I mean, I think what my own experience is that the young people like you have a much greater understanding of, sustainability and all the other things that need to be done as compared to the older generations like me. But I think you're absolutely right, and it's a matter of time before everyone in our country will start to understand it. My next question to you, Charu, is that how do you balance the need to build a profitable company with sustainability goals?
So do you mean in our own context? How do we?
In your own context, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah. So I think first of all, it's also about mindset. So as I mentioned, that a lot of it was done from a CSR point of view. So, and because CSR funds is given through foundation, so you ended up running it as an NGO and
Correct.
non-profits, etc.
Correct.
So it's first of all about a mindset shift. It is just like any other business. You have top line, you have bottom line, you have cost of goods sold, you have cost of services, and you have your expenses, and you have your credit and debit, etc. in it. So that mindset, I think, is important. And I think it's not just me, because we are in this ecosystem. We see a lot of other entrepreneurs as well who've created for profit businesses which have sustainability in their core. Whether it is someone who's providing water meters to make sure that you don't waste a lot of water and you reduce water consumption, or whether it could be someone who's providing packaging which are not plastic but which are using materials which are biodegradable. So a lot of us have actually treated it like a business, and what happens then is that we are trying to see if we are providing real value to our clients and to our customers. Once that sets in, I think it becomes a very obvious thing to do. It is just like any other venture. It just needs a bit more legwork, I think, and a lot more awareness and education. But I think so did technology when it came in. Websites were not normal initially. You needed to educate as to why a website as well 20 years ago.
Mm,
So this is just, at the cusp of that phase. And I think for us, it comes very naturally because we've always treated it like a venture, for
mm,
profit venture.
well said. I've time for two more questions for you. My next question is that based on all the work that you are doing in so many different areas, can you share any one success story uh, or a successful project that has had a significant positive environmental impact which you have been involved in?
Yeah. So I'll very briefly I'll mention about one each of both the ventures we do because they're different segments.
Mhm.
So, for example, Wudbox is all about creating, um, helping to reduce waste and bringing in things which are more, less impactful on the environment. So, we work with companies like Amazon and Hitachi, for example. They are companies which utilize a lot of, they use products to give to their employees. So anytime new bunch of employees come in, they give that.
Mm,
So for around 1,000 of them, we provided them uh, with joining kits which were 100% biodegradable. And when
mhm.
I say 100% biodegradable, meaning literally no waste. In fact,
Okay.
some of them were also created with materials which you would otherwise consider waste.
Mm,
So paper which is recycled. We've used coconut shell which were discarded. We've
mm,
also used crop residue, and there are functional products like coffee mugs and things created out of it, which have around 40 to 50% less carbon emissions.
mm,
So in this, our impact was, of course, on the employees which were given this, also the families which received them, and
mm,
ultimately not ended up creating more products which you would end up, putting in waste, for example, but also the artisans and the families which have worked to create this. And of course, it changes the direction of how the company functions in the future as well. Once you embed sustainability in some or the other way, then it kind of starts becoming an expectation as well. So I think that was one project which we feel had a multifold impact on various things. But also we worked with with a company called Botanic Healthcare.
mhm,
So they export their organic extracts. So for them, it's a manufacturing facility. So for them, we looked at various aspects of their energy, water consumption, the waste they produce, biodiversity cover that they have,
mhm,
procurement, packaging.
mhm,
We understood the processes, operations. We looked at the data of each of them year on year. And based on that, we suggested them with things that they could do so that they save costs as well.
right.
And they end up reducing their carbon footprint as well.
Mm,
And that was extremely fulfilling because this is like helping the businesses top line grow and your bottom line grows along with it.
mm.
So I think these two were like
Very
you know
interesting.
like really close to
Very,
our
very
heart.
great. Great examples. Thank you. And my last question to you, Charu, what is the one thing that you wish more people knew about sustainability?
So I think people should know that mm, it's you asked three things, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
So
can give me three things.
yeah. So I think one thing is, and that's also comes from your skepticism point, that sustainability can actually help you in building your top line and your bottom line.
Yeah,
If you're a business owner, it does that for you.
right.
Second, if you are a consumer, then asking questions about what you consume,
Mm,
that will help in building demand.
yeah.
So if you want a better world for yourself as a consumer, then you need to ask questions so that those wishes get fulfilled as well.
Mm,
And third is that it's no more a soft concept or
mm,
a soft power, but it
mm,
is the present and it is definitely the future for the businesses.
fascinating. Charu, on that note, thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me about your own journey, what got you interested. And I was fascinated to learn how your parents are from Uttarakhand and how they
Hmm.
actually instilled the values of nature from the mountains, and I studied in the mountains, so I know I can relate with what your parents instilled in you. Thank you for speaking to me about your organizations, Pro Zero Carbon and Wudbox. Thank you also for speaking to me about so many different aspects of sustainability. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you, Ashutosh. It was a pleasure speaking to you, and I enjoy your work. So thank you so much for doing this for all of us.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.